Hello, friends. This is Akulmach Live, and I'm Chandrakant. And we are all using digital mediums to communicate, and this has changed the world in more than one way. And one of the impact of the digital communication is that it has broken the barriers of various castes, creed, and even countries. And it has started a drive which has just begun. Basically, it's called the inclusive workforce. So today, this is a topic of our discussion: inclusive workforce, and we have a very important guest, a global leader of sorts, and a celebrity. And we will start our discussion shortly. But before that, I'd like to tell you that there is a giveaway. So please stick around till the end during this outstanding show. We will tell you in the end how you can claim your free gift. Hello, friends. Let's introduce our guest today. His name is Jeremy Blain, and he is a CEO of a very famous organization now, and also a best author. We will be talking about his book today, and the topic of our discussion is inclusive workforce. And Jeremy has suddenly become very popular worldwide because there are a lot of people reading his book. So without further ado, let me present Mr. Blain, who will then give us his perspective about inclusive workforce.
Thank you very much for having me again, CK, and hello to everybody tuning in for this week's episode. Yeah, I'm very passionate about this, CK, because the one thing that I've noticed from a workplace perspective over this past year, which has been really tough, is that borders, physical borders, and in some ways borders of perception have been broken down. Many organizations, including my own, we've embraced remote working. Geographical borders don't matter. I'm not now working with people necessarily within 30 kilometers of where I live or where I work. I'm embracing a worldwide workforce from everywhere. And what we're seeing out there in many organizations is a positive impact on the traditional discrimination lenses that are happening in the workplace. So in fact, it has become more diverse and inclusive and more equitable in how we're doing business, because suddenly we've all found ourselves in the same boat. Everybody is here. Everybody is under the pressure to work differently. Every business is under pressure to find new ways of going. And these traditional things that happen often in our offices and workplaces, the office politics, the discrimination, the unconscious and conscious bias, it's removed because we're seeing people through the lens of a camera, and everybody is making an effort to support each other because we all need it. So what I'm hopeful of, if there is a hope to, as we emerge from COVID and move back into the new normal, my hope is that we take this forward with us and become a much more, not just diverse and inclusive workforce, but equitable, which is balancing an equal opportunity for many people. And as you rightly say, it's a theme actually that I talk about in my book, which is called The Inner CEO, Unleashing Leaders at All Levels. This is about the spirit of empowerment. And I wrote this, of course, before the pandemic, but it was released just kind of during the pandemic, if you like. And it's really quite interesting because I was arguing for this, and I was arguing that in a diverse, inclusive, and equitable environment, the spirit of empowerment can truly flourish. And of course, we're seeing evidence for that already. So I like to claim that I'm ahead of the game on this one, CK, because it's something that I was very passionate about in the book, and something very important, I feel, for workplaces and organizations everywhere.
Well, Jeremy, I think it looks like that you had forecasted, or and in the olden days, people used to say, "Hey, he has foretold the truth. What is going to happen." So, I think which chapter covers about this particular aspect?
Well, yes, I'm indeed a seer of empowerment. In fact, I talk about this all the way through because I feel that we've been talking about leadership at all levels for over 100 years in many organizations. You know this. In all the organizations that we work with, we need to empower our people. We need you to take ownership for what you're doing. But the thing is, it's not equitable in many of our organizations. Many organizations talk a good game, but they don't put the things in place at organizational senior leadership level for it to flourish. That's what you need first. And then you need a safe environment for everybody, regardless of any diversity and inclusion lens that has got in the way in the past, to be able to step up in their role and actually do more, go beyond, because it's been proved that's what people are doing this year. Not only have we been trying to, master our job role in the virtual world, but we've been supporting others in doing more. We've been on project teams. We've been working closer with our teams, and these barriers are coming down. So across the book, actually, this is a theme that I come back to because it's just so important. And I was able to include in the book things that were happening at the time when I was putting the final touches together, like what was happening in the US, of course, with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the debate still on gender diversity. In fact, there's something that I refer to, which I think is really, really important. I don't know if you remember the film, which illustrates the point for me, Hidden Figures in 2016. It was based on the three African-American mathematicians, all female, who worked for NASA, who were doing the calculations about how to get to the moon and, the rockets and so on. And they made vital contributions to the US Space Agency. It was Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, and Katherine Goebel Johnson, I think. And, they had structural bias to get through. They had gender and race against them at a time when men ruled the corporate areas. They ruled the space race, etc. And also race was coming into it. And yet they made this incredible inspirational contribution, which enabled the US to get men into space and men on the moon. And my point about my book is that I think we have many hidden figures within our organizations who haven't been given the opportunity to step up and shine and step out because their face hasn't fit. It's not been thought. They're somewhere else. They're not in our office. They're based somewhere else. Some of these biases coming into it. So for me, the opportunity now is to look back at what's happened over this last year and celebrate the fact that actually many of these individuals have been enabled to step up. Organizations have actually removed some of these biases and found that more people can contribute more to the business as a whole. And I think that's something to celebrate out of what has been a terrible year.
In fact, Jeremy, when you say like this, I think it makes a lot of sense. And, what is happening right now is that there are new leaders which are emerging. So whatever network you have built over last 20 years or 30 years, all these big wigs, their network has no meaning right now because somebody has to reinvent their network in the digital space. So they have to still go through the same process what a youngster would have to do right now. When youngster is out of the college, is making his network, the same challenge remains for big wigs at this point in time. So really this pandemic has brought equality among everyone, and it has broken down the country barrier. Like you and I are talking, we are like 7,000 miles away from each other, but we are talking and doing work. So I think it does not matter anymore which color, which country. The borders are dissolving. I think one thing which still remains is the currency exchange and free trade. Would you have any opinion on that? And recently India and the UK has signed up a very big deal to promote trade. In the backdrop of what you have written in your book, would you have any opinion on a free trade policy across the world?
Well, this is actually an example of barriers being broken down because many countries and economies that may have found it difficult before to trade internationally or to find new ways to get their products to market or to source products to come in, and services, of course, have been caught up in the politics of it. We just come through. Well, let's not forget, before COVID hit, our economies and organizations were going through huge transformation, digital workforce transformation, the blended workforce, you name it. All these diversity lenses, we were tackling all of these big issues as a perfect storm. And of course, we had just had a 10-year global financial crisis. So many economies were looking at how do we accelerate again? And then COVID hit. And so there is a much greater need now to reduce the level of politics and to start thinking much more about, well, how can we do things more efficiently and effectively and quickly, so that we can actually break down traditional barriers, whether they're economic barriers, whether they're diversity lenses, whether they are cultural mindsets, whatever they are, to actually do things in a much more efficient way that benefits everybody.
Well, I think cultural barriers are almost negligible because everybody is using Zoom or some platform or the other, which has the same ethos. It has the same function, same features, same menu, everything is same. So all you have to do is click and you're on, and you have to look good. I think rules of the game are the same while talking, and you have to develop new etiquettes, and it doesn't matter whether you're which race, which color. What remains is a problem which I feel as an entrepreneur myself, that in order to do trade, there are still currency bottlenecks. And in fact, the Singapore and Thailand showed the way recently. They actually merged two of their micro payment applications, allowing people to transfer money from here to there. And they have capped it to about 1,000 Singapore dollars. So this is what we need as part of inclusion. So inclusion on the digital platform is happening. I think people are more and more used to it. There are many programs which are running, but I think the governments have to move forward now in a real sense to enable inclusions of businesses. Otherwise, large corporations will continue to rule the whole thing, and the SMEs and startups will lose out because they will not have mechanism to make the payment or collect the money. What is your opinion?
Yeah. Well, I think this just goes back to actually the big discussion about a more diverse, equitable, inclusive approach to everything that we do. Not just the human touch, but to how we integrate digital, how we make it easy for people to transfer money. Let's say, for example, make it easy for all levels of society. And in fact, I think we need a new language. So for me, instead of diversity and inclusion, I think we need to talk about representation and belonging. So we need a representation, and it's a mindset, this as much as a language. Representation. Are we representing everybody in the right way so that they can thrive in the workplace, so that they can do their transactions efficiently as other people can, who have, much more at their fingertips that they can, and they have much more of the luxury of being able to find different ways of doing it. Perhaps, representation of the poorer people in societies and some of the poorer economies and nations, to bring them up to a level more rapidly so that they can work with the rest of the world on a level playing field. So I think that's the first one. And then move away from an unequal society and look at a more equitable society. So, and that goes beyond transactions into resources. It's famine and feast, isn't it? And fundamentally, clearly, in parts of the world, it's about that when we talk about food. The unequal distribution of resources is still a massive issue for the world. Climate change is impacting some of the poorer nations of the world, so they're not able to even secure their crops, let's say, for any given year, and yet the resources in the bumper crops where they have thrived in countries that are perhaps ahead of them, it's not being equitably distributed. So that is one thing, and it's often because we use the word bias, unconscious or conscious bias. So our biases mean that, well, why should we do that? We're not thinking in that sort of macro planet being a force for good way. We should start thinking, instead of bias, about tolerance. How do we become more tolerant to economies, people who may have struggled in the past, may have made some poor decisions in the past, but through no fault of their own, and need some help to get up so that they become part of the global family, and so that we can distribute resources more equally, we can transact more equally, and give people more opportunities. Because in many of those countries, and I think in Southeast Asia, I'm thinking about in South Asia, in Africa, in parts of Europe, even still in parts of Latin America as well, this transcends into very directly into race and gender bias, and back to race and gender bias as well. So you find then that the decision making around some of these things is still in the hands of the few. And I think if we get over this and talk about what we're talking about being more diverse, we start to have a much more broader diversity of thinking, which is an incredibly important addition that we all need to think about, CK.
Taking the discussion forward and bringing the inclusion, and you made a lot of pertinent points, how do we actually do it? Do you think cryptocurrency plays a major role in bringing this up?
Cryptocurrency has benefited, again, the rich and the people who know and who have the access to technology and the resources, so that they can use it as a trading platform at the moment. If this is again on a more equitable, inclusive and diverse platform, it may be different. But right now, I think the jury is out on cryptocurrencies about what is actually going to happen. Will the bubble burst? Nobody knows. All we hear about at the moment are the people that invested, who were able to, because they had the opportunity and the finances to invest, over the last sort of 2 to 5 years, and have made a lot of money out of it. That's really not great news for all of these people that we're talking about that don't have this opportunity, don't have the equitable platform to use it. So again, it's a tool of the haves, not the have-nots at the moment. So I think it will become a serious prospect once we make it much more inclusive.
Well, you're talking about all of these subjects in your book. Would you like to draw references on how you have provided solution of all these problems to the readers?
Yeah, well, I come back to the point about empowerment. If we take away some of these old lenses that we've got, and we give people the opportunity to shine, to go beyond a job description, to be what we used to call them, a leader at their level, and to have ideas, to sponsor their ideas, to allow them to contribute more with different people across borders, taking down old barriers, then I think we will mine the diamonds within our own organizations and societies, because we're giving more people the opportunity to shine. The problem with talent strategies, so-called, and talent, is that it's with a capital T. That talent with a capital T is exclusive. It's for the few. In my book, I argue we should start talking about talent with a small t, which is a much more inclusive and broad approach to this, that should give, while we acknowledge that not everybody will be able to or would want to step up, it gives much more people the opportunity to show what they can do. And who knows what will happen? Who knows who will emerge and become the next big idea in the organization, will drive the next innovation, become the next leader at their level that brings other people with them. This is really the thread of my book, that we have these diamonds within the organizations, and there is no better time as we emerge from COVID to unleash the potential of the broader organization, not just in the hands of the few.
Well, I think there is an English saying, and I cannot help mentioning that. I told you so. You know. So I think
Yes, well, I'd like to think I go back to this. I was a bit of fortune telling here, but yes, yeah, thank you. Carry on.
Well, I think all the viewers, you can read about inclusive workforce and much, much more in the Inner CEO book written by Mr. Jeremy Blain. And it has become one of the bestseller right now, most sought after book, both on Amazon in soft as well as a paperback edition. So Jeremy, thank you so much for coming and talking to us about this very, very pertinent subject.
It's a pleasure, and yes, it's available on Amazon. And the news today is that within the next 4 weeks, I'm going to release the audio book as well, and that will be on all platforms like Spotify, Deezer, Amazon, YouTube, all of those kind of things too. So yeah, plenty of different formats. But go and take a look. The Inner CEO: Unleashing Leaders at All Levels at your nearest Amazon store now. Thank you, CK.
Wish you all the best, Jeremy, and I'm sure a lot of people will get this book, audiobook, or whatever form they want to access your intellectual property and learn about, what is going on, how the new decade will look like. I think it's very, very critical for everyone to read. So thank you so much once again for joining us in our show. We'll catch up in the next event.
Thank you, CK.
Bye-bye. We have some unique Akulmach memorabilia which will make you look outstanding. The graphics on these corporate gifts are based on the global best business practices. To become recipient of one of these gifts for free, you have to watch this video till the end and provide your valuable comments. Or you can also share your experiences. The person who makes the best comment would be chosen to become a recipient of these beautiful Akulmach gift, absolutely free, delivered to your doorsteps. The winner would also get a chance to be invited live as a distinguished panelist during our next video. What are you waiting for, friends? Please subscribe Akulmach and smash that like button.